G'day, long time no see. Today we're going to be finally taking a look at some of the Tomy Zoids RMZ line and see what we think versus their HMM versions. So, what is a RMZ Zoid? Well, this little Geno fella is one, for starters. They're a fairly smaller line of Zoids that Tomy has started putting out, specifically in the 1/100th scale, that in my opinion capture both the feel of the old motorized kits and the modern HMM line in one, with a nice price point, and the best part is they don't take up too much room. So first up, we're going to take a look at the one that I didn't enjoy the finished result of, being the Blade Liger, and see why. The kit itself is a really enjoyable build with only 12 sprues to manage, and a very easy to navigate instruction manual with both Japanese and English instructions, including labels for all of the sections you're building as you go. A theme across all of the RMZ kits also seems to be labeling on certain parts with a little L or an R for left or right, making it pretty easy to figure out what you're working with on crucial areas that need it. Only taking about 30ish minutes or so to whack the bladey together, I found a lot of the pressed areas feel really nice and firm when they're assembled, whereas its HMM counterpart often needs glue, being a much older design though. And this also brings slightly more body flexibility, but it isn't super different. The biggest crime of the Blade Liger is directly in the lower legs and tail, being the pieces E5 and E6 for the front, D5 and D6 for the rear, and lastly G1 for the tail. Price-wise, the kit comes in around 100 AUD locally, and is definitely a markup that can be found cheaper on places like 19.99 Hobby Search, which it's better to get a few things at the same time and choose EMS to balance out the postage cost in my opinion. That being said, for $100 you can do a lot worse, so it's not great but it's not bad. And with that, let's take a bit of a quick snap back to the finished model and take a look. Starting out, as you can see, the RMZ Blade is only a little fella, somewhere between the size of a Kodo D style and HMM in size. Which is good for saving space, but it missed out on the opportunity to improve itself when compared to the HMM, especially given the age of the HMM and the way the other RMZ go together and have been designed. Taking a look at the finished paws, this is the problem. That's the paw's maximum tilt forward, which is thanks in part to the earlier mentioned pieces having a static joint connection. That means that it can't pivot or move about freely, also hindering the backwards tilt as shown now. This is a damn shame because you can't put it in the standard hanger, standing at attention looking pose, or it looks like this. That's with the straight legs right there. It won't sit flat. And that's something they should have been able to easily make better, like they did on both the Geno and the Schubaltz Saber you're gonna see soon. As a comparison, this is the motion that you can achieve on the HMM paw tilting forward, which goes a little further than this but looks wonky. But the point is, it can. And now the back tilt, which you can see is a long sweeping range achievable both ways and allows you much more freedom for the poses that you can cook up. Moving on to the tail, this was just purely disappointing with the HMM leaving a lot to be desired, begging for an update or a remake at some point. But giving the same unmoving style to the new RMZ Bladey is just sad. When you look at the insane articulation of the Geno tail that's coming up, you're going to be left probably wanting about as much as I am. The verdict is, I choose the HMM personally, and that the RMZ is best suited to folks who aren't familiar with building models, haven't got too much room, or just want to dip their toes into the nostalgia from Chaotic Century in a bit of a comfy way, and I promise, you'll enjoy this build regardless of how I personally feel about it. Up next is another huge fan favourite, the Genosaur. Interestingly, they've included an early fix for a couple of mistakes in the manual, being mixing the numbers up on a couple of torso pieces, and a later problem with the legs, where the manual incorrectly shows pegs on the wrong side of the pieces. But this doesn't really hurt the build or do anything, so don't worry about it, just pay attention. Comparing it to the Blade Liger, we've got 23 sprues up from 12, and this makes sense. This thing has gorgeous color separation, absolutely epic posing potential with all of the articulation they've managed to fit into this tiny little thing, and a really enjoyable build that comes in at around 50ish minutes to do. Much like the Blade Liger, everything feels really tight and solid when pressed together, not needing any glue, and it really does have that quality feel to it. As a heads up, for those of you who aren't super familiar with model kits, do pay attention while you're doing the tail section and knuckles, because this could be the spot that you trip up and make mistakes, as there's varying sides across the board with a few pieces on the go. Price wise, he's going to be coming in at around 135 Australian dollars locally, and I think that's pretty much worth the money. Actually very worth it, given what this kit is like. It's designed with pure love, and it really does show it all over. So now let's take a closer look at him all done. As I've mentioned, the posing availability for this little fella is brilliant. The tail more than exceeded my expectations, and it absolutely shatters the HMM version in terms of articulation. which can be used to balance it simply by thinking on how you've got it angled. Being a little over half the size of the HMM Geno, it takes up less room, but it doesn't actually stop him from standing up tall if you want him to. Kind of looking like the Death Saurer, honestly. In my opinion here, the purple that's also used on the RMZ is much nicer, as are the colours in general versus the HMM version, because it just pops even with the low amounts of detailing that I've added to this one. Looking at the paw or foot joint, this ball joint and pivoting ankle is exactly what the Blade Liger was lacking, as it gives even this conky boy much more freedom in angles of pose you can achieve, and it even mimics the HMM single foot balance. But just note, this is a repack Geno HMM, which the ankles were a fix. The verdict is, both are great kits, but I think it comes down to what you're looking for or want, honestly. The RMZ is lower cost, less parts, and smaller without sacrificing anything that makes it awesome in the HMM version really, so it's up to you. Finally, we move on to the best boy. Now, it's not a very hidden fact that Sabers are my favourite Zoids, so this one by default is going to be my favourite RMZ because it just is. But the thing that makes it a home run is the way they've taken everything good about the HMM version and downsized it into this cheeky little one, including its movements and posing. Coming in at 21 sprues, this kit will keep you going for around the same time that the Geno does, so let's call it around 50 minutes-ish. And does have a couple of spots that may cause you some confusion or frustration, mainly relating to the springs they've used for piping. Like the other two, the manual for this boyo is really well done and laid out with brilliant labeling and easy to follow steps. But you'll need to be paying attention on step 4 being page 5, step 5 being page 8, and step 12 on page 12. And that's all to do with the springs. On step 4, make sure you check the way that the loop on the spring is facing when you connect it between H1 and H14. Then likewise with H13 into the larger section you've built up before that. Otherwise they're not going to sit right when you try and clamp the sides together, but also be aware the springs do be springing. As for step 5 on page 8, take your time because the spring ring is going to want to slip off consistently and it's probably going to frustrate some of you folks. Finally, step 12 on page 12, when you're connecting the spring to the front pack, you need to slide and wiggle the spring down over the internal rod there for it to not be super noodly and hang super low and be too long, like all over the place. And personally, I trimmed my spring down a little bit before doing this and got it to sit how I like it. Price-wise, if you can find this run, it's going to run you up around 140 Australian dollars, and again, like the Geno, it's really worth that price given the quality that you're paying for. Which will now take a gander at the finished boyo. Firstly, the reason that they've used springs for the piping on this one is really simple. The gummy soft parts used all over the HMMs will often react with other plastics and degrade to the point of turning brittle and cracking, as every single soft plastic pipe on my very first HMM, my Schubaltz Saber, has literally just done today. This is a good idea, I think. Let's see how it holds up over time though, because time is the ultimate test after all. Looking at his paws, this makes me so sad about the Blade Liger, as shown. He's got pivoting ball joints also, along with rotating joints just below the shoulders, and allows for tons of posing potential, with this being his maximum forward rotation of just the ball joint. Rotating it back, we can also see that it's got a lot of movement room, just like its HMM Papa, which we'll now take a look at. As I mentioned earlier, this was my very first physical HMM that I ever got back in 2012, and he's very aged at this point, so we don't often like to stress him out. But a good little bit of stretching is okay. And now you can see what I mean about the movement of the paws shown in both the RMZ and HMM, which, droning on here, I'm not sure what happened with the Blade Liger or how that got approved. When you put these two side by side, they look absolutely fantastic, and are clearly very well mirrored when you put them into such poses such as the prowling look, the at rest, or, you know, hanger look I guess, sitting ready, or even the arrangement of sitting and looking like good kitty boys. Honestly, they've done really well with this one, and the best part about it is, it's available. Well, I mean, it's just released and it's pretty much sold out everywhere, so hang by for a restock if you missed that wave, obviously. But the point is that the HMM variant is pretty pricey, and most likely never going to return, sadly. Ultimately, this line has a lot of potential, I feel, but for me, I love the HMMs due to the parts count and the issues that make the builds more challenging if they have them. However, these serve as a really good side build, even for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had a little bit more free time to get a format like this out, but I'm not sure how it'll go. I ain't gonna lie, it did feel really weird playing with the models like this. But hey, happy modeling, and till the next one, take care.